Hey guys, welcome to a new movie review. For those who did see my 8-part and 4-part kind of recovery videos of films that I covered over the course of my surgery recovery, thank you for doing that. I know it was a long series of videos, and I'm finally glad to finally return to kind of my regular format of movie reviews. So just the video alone will just be one review of something. Um, Once again, thank you for any of those who did watch any of those videos at all, just because it really means a lot to me. It's kind of cool to share films that I got to talk about over the course of surgery and things like that. But for today's movie review, I am talking about Candyman, the new 2021 reboot. This film is directed by Nia DaCosta and produced by Jordan Peele. Nia DaCosta is going to work on the future Captain Marvel sequel for Marvel, and of course Jordan Peele's worked on like Get Out and Us and several other projects at this point. But in this new Candyman movie, you guys, this is both a sequel and a reboot to that 1992 film. Um, in this new Candyman movie, though, we follow a man who doesn't really know a lot about his past. He works as a freelance artist. A lot of his paintings are getting a lot of recognition. And he finds out through a friend of his about this urban myth in this area that he lives in because he lives in a neighborhood where you can probably tell there's a lot of crime that happens and a lot of like graffiti and just a lot of like crime ridden area in this place that he lives in. And so his friend told him about this guy who got killed a long time ago, and his name was the Candyman. And it actually has a different kind of origin story to that first Candyman character from the first film. So immediately right away, this pretty much is a different Candyman character that we're focusing on in this movie. And as this freelance artist is starting to get more recognition for his work, and he's starting to get more interested in this whole Candyman myth now that he knows a little bit more about him through his friend, he just kind of gets obsessed with it. A lot of his work has the Candyman character in it, and he just kind of can't get this character out of his mind. And while this is all happening, all these murders are taking place. All these people who are trying out the whole Candyman experiment, because if you say his name 5 times in front of a mirror, supposedly he will appear before you and kill you. And so all these people are trying it out again. Now he's kind of getting this idea back out into the world with his work, and a lot of people are paying attention to his work. So throughout the course of this film, this guy has to figure out how exactly did the Candyman get unleashed again? Why all of a sudden, after all these years later of nothing happening, all these murders are taking place? How can he stop the Candyman? Can he stop the Candyman? And what exactly can he do at this point to make sure that all these crimes are stopping? That people just appreciate his work, to appreciate his work, and not just do it for finding out if the Candyman is real or not. And all that happens over the course of this new Candyman movie. But overall, guys, I thought this was a good sequel and reboot to that first Candyman film. I still think the first Candyman film from 1992 is the better movie. I think it has more of a mystery to it. I like how they played off of the urban myth factor a little bit better than they did in this movie. I was very interested in the whole Virginia Madsen journalist kind of figuring out how accurate this whole Candyman myth was in this. Um, so there's just a lot of things about this movie that I liked. There's just unfortunately some things about this film that I didn't like, and why it ultimately doesn't live up to that first Candyman film from 1992. But for my positives and negatives of this movie, you guys, I do, like I said, I think this film does work as a sequel and a reboot. I think it does continue the story the way it should, while also rebooting the franchise in case they do want to make more Candyman films in the future. Um, they definitely there's something about the lead character that I can't get into because it'd be spoiler territory, but it does connect with the first film and kind of the fate of Virginia Madsen's character. I think her name was like Lynn Kyle or something along that line. It does connect to that. So, like I said, I think the film successfully works as a sequel and works as a reboot in case they want to make more Candyman films. I also thought the cinematography in this film was absolutely fantastic. You could definitely tell Nia DaCosta and a lot of her crew behind the camera for this movie really knew how to frame a shot, how to get the feeling of this neighborhood to kind of feel claustrophobic at times when we do see the Candyman at like a laundromat or in a glass elevator or places where the Candyman is more visible and things like that. So you could definitely tell they did a great job with the cinematography of this film, making this film feel claustrophobic, sometimes uncomfortable intentionally, and just really putting you into this world that we were introduced to in 1992. I also like the use of the overall Candyman urban myth in this. I like how people kind of know about it, they don't want to talk about it. This guy's freelance work with his paintings kind of gets people talking about it again. And so it's one of those things where it's kind of this bad experience within the neighborhood that people don't really want to talk about again. But there's things that happen in the story that kind of encourage people to have that conversation again after all these years of no Candyman activity at all and no discussion about it at all. So I like the use of the urban myth in this, and that's ultimately, I think, what intrigued me about that first Candyman film as well, is just how well the urban myth played out and how similar it was to the old Bloody Mary myth. That's an actual real thing. Another positive I have with the movie is the use of um, paper cutout animation to kind of talk about the origin of the Candyman and be able to talk about certain characters' fates and not just have flashbacks. I do like how it had this old paper cutout feeling of this is what happened to the Candyman, this is what happened to the people who were trying to protect the Candyman and those who have like relations to other people in his family and things like that. So I do like the use of paper cutout animation. Some of the trailers for this film promoting the film also had this as well. And I like how they did keep some of the best animation with that paper cutouts for the movie. They really did kind of keep the best parts just for the film. I also like the idea of that there was never just one Candyman, that if there is this tragic occurrence that happens of somebody that had a similar fate to the Candyman from the 1800s, that there is more than one Candyman, there is more than one way for the Candyman to come back. It doesn't have to be that Tony Todd version that we saw in that first Candyman movie. So I like the idea of more than one Candyman existing. If you have something as tragic happen to you as that first Candyman film, or as that first Candyman character had, there is a way to kind of take over for the Candyman and things like that. So there's certain like ideas in this film that are intriguing like that. But let's talk about the negatives for the film too. First and foremost, for the negatives of this movie, there really is a lot of unlikable side characters in this. There's a lot of art critics, a lot of people that don't like this guy's work or are worried about kind of the Candyman being too big within the pop culture again, and that it kind of will be out of control with people get intrigued by the Candyman myth and want to try to say his name 5 times in front of a mirror and things like that. Um, there's just a lot of these characters are really unlikable, and that's really too bad. And a lot of them do kind of get killed off, I guess you could say. But I'm one of those people where if you're gonna make a movie, make every character in the script work. Try to make them likable. Don't try to make them terrible people. It's one of those things where if every character is terrible in the movie, you don't have anybody to root for. Specifically in a movie like this, where you want people to survive, you want them to be able to get rid of the Candyman. I gotta have some fate and some hope in some of these characters, and if a lot of them are unlikable, it's going to be hard to get into the story, specifically with the art critic characters. I also thought the trailers kind of gave away a little too much with this movie. There's something that happens in the film where some of the people in the audience were kind of surprised. I kind of wasn't. I kind of knew the route that they were going in by halfway into the movie easily. And once again, I do think the trailers did give away a little too much. It's one of those movies where I kind of wasn't surprised with anything how it played out. I kind of knew that there was going to be some alteration to the Tony Todd Candyman, that there was going to be some other person that takes his place and things like that. A lot of the trailers kind of gave that away, unfortunately. And that's really not a spoiler, because if it's in the trailers, that's a sign that the producers and the director of this movie are okay with you knowing about it when you go into the movie. So I don't really know how to feel about that. But and going into my next negative point, I thought the more use of the Tony Todd character would have been more effective in this movie. We do see his Candyman show up briefly in this movie. I really would have preferred more of his Candyman in this, though the guy who was kind of the new Candyman wasn't bad. I'm kind of here to see a continuation of that Candyman character. So even though I like the idea of more than one Candyman and anyone could become Candyman with a tragic enough past and things like that, I really could have used more of the Tony Todd version of the Candyman. It really felt very lacking in this movie. I also thought there was a lot of rehashed elements from the first film, a lot of mystery of the Candyman, figuring out if he's real or not. Somebody goes crazy about it. Somebody's trying gets so obsessed with the case that they kind of become something as bad, if not worse, than the Candyman. There's a lot of that in this movie, unfortunately. So I would have preferred a script that, yeah, you can honor the original, you can honor certain elements about it, but make this its own story. Try not to rehash that first film too much, like what this film tried to do every once in a while. I also thought there wasn't enough world building and expanding in this world. I just thought, for being a sequel slash reboot, I would have preferred a way for this universe to get expanded and built upon. Yes, there is more than one Candyman, but how is that significant? What's the consequence of having more than one Candyman? I think certain aspects of this film would have worked better if there was more explanation and justification for these kind of things. I also thought a lot of the blood and gore was really pointless in this movie. I thought there really was just some kills in this that were there just to be there and just to get as gory as possible. A lot of people like me are going to get kind of turned off by that. Yes, it's a horror film. Yes, I got to know that there's a lot of violence in it, specifically a R-rated horror film. But there is a lot of moments here that do feel like it's just blood and gore just for the sake of it. I also thought this film doesn't stand on its own very well. It just nods back to that first film so much that any of those who haven't seen that first Candyman film in so long, like I have, it's been at least a good solid 5 or 6 years since I saw that first Candyman movie, if not longer. It really, there's a lot of moments where it's like, well, wait, who's that? What's that supposed to be? What's that supposed to be a nod to? I really would have preferred a sequel slash reboot that could have stand alone on its own better than this. I would have preferred something like that first Candyman film where I can kind of just watch it and enjoy it for that one viewing, for that one sitting, and not have to rewatch every single Candyman film just to understand certain small moments within this movie. And then, what else? There's something else. I think that's about it. So overall, guys, I would give Candyman an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good film. Like I said, it works well as a sequel and a reboot. The cinematography is great. The use of the Candyman urban myth is pretty cool again. The use of paper cutout animation was very effective in this, specifically going over origins of certain characters. And I do like the idea of there was never just one Candyman. There could be more than one based on how their life plays out and things like that. But like I said, there is a lot of negatives with this, just enough negatives where I do feel like the first film is a much, much better film than this movie is. 8 out of 10 for me. I like this movie. I would recommend seeing it just enough. Make sure you've seen that first Candyman film and enjoy that first Candyman film before seeing this. Um, it's a good film. It's just not a great film. There's certain aspects of the story I really think could have been better. I like the film overall, but there's just enough negatives here where I can't just profoundly recommend it just because there is a lot of problems with the movie too.